Hey folks, Kuro the Artist here. So recently I was sent this Reddit thread titled, "What are some things about 5YL that you don't like?" In case you haven't heard, 5YL is a crossover continuation of Ben 10 and Danny Phantom, with a handful of other shows referenced here and there, which has recently been adapted into a motion comic starring Scott Frericks, aka Kaiser Neko, Paxton Lee, Jonah Scott, Brooke Chalmers, and a few other notable VAs. And I make this with my buddies OR Ash, Kellen Goff, Xander Mobus, Crystal, and Noxie, with additional help and input from Hershey and Fro. Now that it's gained some notoriety in the fandom, much to a fair amount of people's annoyance, in which, my bad, but I thought it would be fun to use this thread to respond to a few criticisms in the comments. I'm still working on episodes 4 through 6 and wanted to throw together an easier video for the time being, because as we all know, YouTubers are a slave to the mysterious and unforgiving algorithm, and if I don't keep pumping out that sweet content, I'll be digitally blacklisted from every subscription box, and then YouTube will kill my channel, my goldfish, and my firstborn son. And plus, while I love the high praise some of y'all give the series, I want to give the haters a spotlight too, so let's dive in. Oh, but if you're experiencing 5YL for the first time through the motion comic, which at the time of this video only has the first 3 episodes out, there's major spoilers ahead, as the comic version is already up to chapter 12. So this user has an issue with ghosts from Danny Phantom having the power to take down a celestial sapien. I've actually seen this criticism a lot, and to be real, it seems like most of the people that have this issue are people who haven't actually watched Danny Phantom. If you've ever seen the show, you know how crazy ghosts can get. There's casual reality warpers, powers working in extreme, limitless, ambiguous ways. Ghosts are casually messing and rewriting reality, and it's never really explained how they do it. They just kind of do it. If you really think about what some of the ghosts can do, it's like freaking nuts. Especially with the fact that Danny can go toe-to-toe with a lot of them who are pretty much gods. A great example would be Dark Danny. He's a fusion of both Danny and Vlad's ghost half, so already he is bare minimum twice as powerful as Danny, and that's assuming Vlad is only equal to Danny. We all know he's much more powerful. And he's also 10 years in the future, so he's had all that time to train, invented new powers, took over the world, and then Danny beat him. That's right, Danny beat an older, more powerful fusion version of himself, and casually replicated his super move after seeing it only once on a hologram. Like, I'm not making this shit up. Now, Danny Phantom is a show that takes its logic and, for lack of a better term, power scaling a lot less serious and looser than Ben 10. And yes, Ben 10 does take it more seriously than people give it credit for, but it's loose, cartoonish, almost Toon Force logic, combined with the fact that it seems like every ghost can just do ridiculous things. It stands to reason that if you were to really focus on it and evolve these powers with some true dedication, which most ghosts don't, then yeah, I really think that they could take down a celestial sapien. Or at least there's a narrative path that makes sense that leads to that conclusion. So a big one, let's just get this out of the way. The biggest criticism 5YL usually gets is our alien redesigns. Not even so much like the overall art style itself, it's like specifically the alien redesigns, and like, I get it. Alien designs has always been one of the most divisive topics in the fandom. It's probably like the #1 most talked about thing, especially because the show is constantly flopping art styles. So of course, with Ben 10 fans dominating the 5YL community, and the fact that the comic is in a different art style from the show, that's definitely going to be something that's focused on. And a lot of people don't really vibe with the designs, and like, that's fine. To each their own. You can't please them all. And yeah, we do draw a lot of things very weirdly. So, like I said, I get it. But I do want to break down our design philosophy a little bit, or the lack thereof one. Simply put, 5YL has been worked on by multiple artists over the past 7 years with developing interests, skill sets, and design philosophies. That to say there even is a 5YL art style is kind of a false statement. They're all pulled and created from different areas of creativity. Like a lot of the earlier ones are just remnants from how I used to draw the aliens back in the day when I was growing up. Ghost Freak, Feedback, Accelerate. I never really sat down and went like, okay, let's come up with a solid design that matches this universe. It was like, I've been drawing these aliens for over a decade and I've been messing around with the designs. It just kind of amused me that they looked this way, and I threw them in the comic. Same with the Heat Blast leggings. I like drawing it that way. It's really not any deeper than that. Then of course there's aliens that aren't even designed by me, like Jet Ray. His design was done by Insane Main and was completed before the comic even began. I literally just saw that on his DeviantArt or something and thought it looked cool and asked if I can use it and threw it right in there. Armadillo's another one that gets thrown around a lot, and that one was actually designed by Insane Main as well. I did tweak it a little bit for the final, but not by too much. And this user actually brings up that I said one time that if I was in charge of that design now, I would probably have done it differently, which is true, but not to say that like I dislike Insane Main's design. I actually still love it, but like now that it's been like 7 years, I just have a different thought process when designing aliens. So it would be differently just because my brain works differently than 7 years ago. OR Ash does a lot of of the designs too. And the aliens that I design myself, not only does my idea for aliens change throughout the years, but like my art skill and my art style as well. Like if you take a look at these two different aliens, I'd argue they even look like they were drawn by different people. One of our older design philosophies that we've kind of navigated away from simply just because I don't care as much anymore is trying to make the aliens look more organic. And even then, like, I didn't have as much of a fine-tuned production cycle as I do now, but since day one, I always operated under the guise that I want to get things out in a moderate pace, so we would seldom ever do a second or third pass on an alien. We'd kind of just draw something, be like, looks neat, slap it in the comic, and as long as you can tell it's that alien, that's all I really care about. Think of that what you will, but that's the truth. Like, way big's a huge divisive one, but I mean, you can tell that's way big, so that's what matters to me. In fact, way big is probably the biggest alien that people have an issue with, and like, that's understandable. He looks very different from his canon design, and he looks pretty gross. A lot of people really don't vibe with the skin armor thing. I still stand by it, but if you don't like it, no hard feelings. Atomics is another one. Although this one, a lot of people's issue with it is he doesn't look strong and muscular, but it's like he's a robot, kind of, or like this mechanical being. I don't see why muscle mass would make a difference for something like that. But yeah, he's another one a lot of people have a problem with. There's also the fact, I know this section's going on for a bit, but it's a big topic, that a lot of the designs I design just to pay respects to the show, like Omniverse Swampfire's collar, I freaking hate it. I really do. I hate it so much. But to respect the fact that Ben blossomed in Omniverse and to try to tie things to the canon as much as I can, I did design 5-Whale Swampfire with his blossom form in mind, including the collar. Still hate it, but it's there. Same with whenever you hear me say something about a design that I do or don't like in a video, most notably the Alien Designs videos or any of my breakdowns. Like, I'm really not a fan of the Omnitrix just manifesting random tools and armor and clothes and stuff, but yeah, you'll see that I do the same for 5YL. Because even if I don't like it, that is how the Omnitrix works. So sometimes I just push aside my interests and be like, you know what? It's been proven that it does that. If Jerry Rig can have goggles and a scarf, then Wild Mutt can have a horn and a saddle. It also should be noted that most of the aliens, I would even go as far to say like 85-90% of them were just commissions that I've drawn for them so that I can raise money to like run my website and pay all the people I work with, and also eating is good. A fair amount of the time the commissioners don't want me to change them up too much, so I'm just redrawing what they already drew but in my own art style. But the way I see it is there's canonically over 1 million aliens in the Omnitrix. They could look like anything at this point. Even blocks, I'm kind of just continuing the meme every time I rag on him. Like, I don't give a shit anymore. I really don't. So like at this point, I'm just kind of drawing whatever. If people allow me to change up their designs a lot, I will, but most of the time they just like it as is. And this isn't to rag on their aliens or designs either. I'm just saying, like, if you're on the wiki and you look at their info box, you can see like who this alien was created by. Sometimes you can even see their concept art. So the 5YL playlist arsenal is this giant massive collaboration between myself and the community. And on the topic of Alchemist specifically, because he's part of the thread, he was based on the typical alchemy outfit you would see, like the wizardry or whatever you'd see in like an MMO or something. But to look at this and say it's a weird Asian stereotype, I think you got some work to do on yourself there, buddy. That's not good. That shouldn't be your first thought. And on a final note, I'll admit I really just don't care that much what the aliens look like, especially with OR Ash on board, who adds a lot of like scientific input to it. He really strives for like the fact that these are like existing beings out there and not just superheroes or random cool looking guys. So like if an alien looks awkward or gross or something, you know, maybe if it was real, it would look like that. Like if an alien doesn't look like a cool superhero transformation, at least to me, that's not my priority. But yeah, 5YL design philosophy, it's a freaking mess. It is. Too many people involved, too much time has passed. You can definitely see a difference between an artist who sits down and takes their time to make sure all these aliens are designed with a type of theory and harmony in mind, and they're usually all done in one go, or at least within the same couple of months time frame, versus 5YL where we're kind of just making stuff. But I also think that's what makes it interesting. But yeah, let's move on. Now this next one kind of ties into the conversation I just had, but it's more about how I respond to these criticisms. There's a bunch of different things I can point to, but just for the sake of keeping things within the Reddit thread, there was this user who noticed on Twitter that I did actually do a variant of feedback with the tendrils put back on the head, and at first thought I was super angry about it, but then later deduced I was annoyed because the tweet is captioned with me saying, "There, the tendrils are back on his head, stop whining." And to be frank, that's just a caption, and I wasn't expecting anyone to take it more seriously than just a passing glance. It just amuses me to write stuff like that sometimes because it makes the post funnier than just posting the image. It's like, here you go. But you really shouldn't take anything I say online seriously. I constantly say stuff just to mess with people because this is the internet. Nothing is real. Everything on here is a performance. And if you think you know somebody just through their social medias, trust me, you don't. you'll never find the bodies. But yeah, even if you think there's a semblance of truth to some of the stuff I say whenever it's like really snarky or sarcastic, like there's really not. Sometimes I just straight up lie because this is all fake, you know? Like we're all constantly saying about how everything on the internet is fake and scripted in a performance, yet we still hold people to the things they say online as legitimate. And I figured we were all on the same page about that. And I've talked about this before, but if I could just make all of my videos online like this, I would, but that's not interesting, and then I've accepted my fate. But I mean, truthfully, if I've ever offended anybody by speaking online or seeming like I'm upset or too sarcastic or this and that, honestly, I really do apologize. That part's not a lie. It's just, you know, you gotta create some type of personality in order to amuse people and interact with them online. I've tried doing it one way, it doesn't work. I tried leaving and my content doesn't really work without like a figurehead to it. And I kind of just see it as like an acting job, you know? Like I'm not as concerned about if people really know me or know what I feel and think anymore. So simply put, if I post something on social media or I say something in a video and it seems like I'm adding some type of emotional layer to it, it really is just for the performance. Editor Kuro here, I feel like this just needs a little bit more clarity. What I mean is like the whole, hey guys, Kuro the artist here kind of thing, and like all of the jokes and snarky remarks and stuff. That kind of stuff you don't have to take seriously. I'm just trying to convey information in an amusing way. But like when I'm talking to fans on stream, or if I reply to fan art or something, I truly do appreciate you guys, and I love that you're around. I'm just saying stuff like the Twitter caption, it doesn't mean anything. So this topic kind of counts, where it's talking about the girlfriend redesigns video that I did with Ash, where we canonically made Ben the reason for Emily ending up in a wheelchair. I did a whole response to that already, and I'll link that down below if you want to see the full thing. But short answer, in 5YL, I feel like it makes sense for Ben to have accidentally caused some tragedies, and it's not like Ben like enjoyed the fact or something. Like I feel like some people are looking at this as if like Ben like purposely pushed her off and felt great about it. I think a little tragedy here and there makes a better character, and I also genuinely love what we did with Emily and how it pushed her to become like a galactic lawyer. But in terms of canon, exactly like what I said in my breakdown, I really hope that that isn't the reason that she's in a wheelchair. Even if he was put in a scenario where that was his only option, responding in a way like,
come on, it was one date, how bad could it have been,
is not appropriate whatsoever. But then again, we don't have confirmation that Ben is responsible for her handicap, so could be looking too far into it. So yeah, I'm not even saying I believe it. Similar to my topic about everything online is a performance, anything I say in my breakdown, if it's not part of the rating section, it's probably just a theory, or I'm just saying some random shit, you know? I'm just saying whatever pops into my head. I talked about this a little bit in my previous criticism video as well. If I say like, this could be an interesting thought, that does not mean I believe it 100%, and I want all of you to believe it too. Just like, come on, really? This one points out that it's more of a Danny Phantom comic than a Ben 10 comic, and that's just, I don't know, true? Well, at least in its conception. So like I made 5YL to be part of the Go Ghost Again movement. I was going through another popular wave when Butch Hartman first came to YouTube, and I was like, I want to be a part of that. And I snuck Ben 10 in there because I secretly wanted to convert all the Danny Phantom fans to Ben 10 fans because I love Ben 10, and he was kind of just like non-existent online until I made that Goku video. Again, whoops. But yeah, like with the completed final product, I would say it's a pretty even balance. If you're a Ben 10 fan, the Ben 10 stuff's gonna pop out to you more. Same with Danny Phantom. It's like, I've heard so many different contrasting views of whether or not this is more a Ben 10 comic or a Danny Phantom comic. At this point, take whatever you want away from it. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna keep writing the story how I want to, and if you think it's more of one thing than the other, then I hope you enjoy it. But they also mentioned that I nerf Ben a lot, and it's like, really? But now it's time to tackle another one of the biggest criticisms, is that 5YL is too edgy. And I gotta be real, it's like, it's not. I mean, compared to the cartoon version, it is more prominent with the amount of violence and adult language, but it's not like these characters are coming out the gate, murdering everybody, sexualizing themselves, swearing up a storm, everything is black and raining all the time. The way I see edginess is usually overindulged in that area to something that really doesn't need it. Whereas I would say in 5YL, I am pretty selective with the amount of language and violence that I portray. It's really nothing more than like a Marvel movie. Like in Age of Ultron, literally the very first line of dialogue you hear is shit. Like, would you say Age of Ultron is edgy? I think it's just jarring that because Ben 10 was a cartoon, I keep talking about Ben 10. Danny Phantom's here too. You guys see what I mean about Ben 10 fans dominating the fan base? Anyways, because Ben 10 aired on Cartoon Network, they couldn't show any violence or swearing, but like realistically, teenagers and adults swear all the time. In fact, I would even argue that most of the people that have a problem with the characters in the comics swear themselves, probably a lot more than they realize. Like, it just happens. Not to mention that the show also featured its fair amount of violence too. Like in the example, in Ultimate Alien, when Sir George stabs Conduit Edwards, it's done out of frame, bloodless, and you don't see any exit wounds. Whereas in 5YL, the scene would probably be the same, except we would show the wound, because it's not airing on Cartoon Network. What would make it edgy is if George was like malicious about it or or something, and he was just stabbing him over and over again and chopping off his fingers and being like, "You wretched goddamn motherfucking bastard, I swear to God, because you hurt Winston, I'm going to make your days..." I don't know. I'm out of steam. But you get what I mean, right? It's like, compared to the show, it is a lot more mature, but it's really not, like, edgy. And I'm also convinced that, like, people are just, like, making shit up at this point. Like, this comment does say that some of the F-bombs in 5YL are just there for shock value, and, like, the word fuck is literally not ever said in 5YL. Like, you can go check for yourself. So it's just... I don't know where they're getting that. And this comment says they swear like 4 times in 2 pages and then never again, and like that also doesn't happen, so I don't know how to respond to that. Like, you guys are actually reading the comic before you criticize it, right? This comment also says, like, you can be mature without going the Shadow the Hedgehog route, and, like, I'm not a fan of Sonic, so I don't really get it. I know a Shadow is kind of, like, the symbol for edginess, but it's, like, he's, like, a Nintendo character, right? Like, to me, this is implying, like, Shadow the Hedgehog route of edginess is, like, Shadow's out there murdering people and calling them a motherfucker or something. Like, does that happen? Like, he's a cartoon hedgehog, right? Like, how is that your basis for edginess? If you think Shadow the Hedgehog is edgy, then of course everything else is gonna seem edgy by comparison. The frickin' Barbie movie must be edgy because they say the word penis. This comment's actually interesting because it's talking about a potential plot hole. Why do the plumbers have schematics on the Ultimatrix? And like, yeah, fair point. Why do they have schematics on the Ultimatrix? I don't freaking know. I mean, Ben has gotten the Omnitrix scanned multiple different times. I'm assuming people are just downloading the database. Plus the fact that Kevin was able to enhance the Ultimatrix with the key system, I'm sure that he had to understand the inner mechanisms of how the Ultimatrix works and probably kept a record of it somewhere. Plus it's 5 years, anything could have happened, but yeah, good point. There's no direct reason for it, but I still feel like it's kind of believable that at some point within the end of Ultimate Alien to 5YL, they probably got some schematics on the Ultimatrix. Also, a surprising amount of people really have an issue with Zim being there, and it's like, why does it matter? If anything, it's kind of flattering because that means that people are holding 5YL to such a high standard where they're actually looking for like themes and narrative structures and what does and does not break a story. Whereas with like any other fan fiction, you can have like Ben 10 meet Deku and they both like have to defeat an army of Venoms or something and people are just like, good shit. So it's like Zim's there just because I wanted him to be there. Kind of because 5YL was built on the premise that it gives respect to shows that were horribly mishandled by the network, and Zim absolutely was. And he doesn't have as big as a role or Ben and Danny, so in comparison it's kind of just like, yeah, why is he there? But like, I really don't see why it's an issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't break the story. If anything, it contributes to it. Zim's base gives Eon access to a bunch of technology because otherwise he would have to like invent it or plan a heist and steal it or something. Zim's gullible enough for Eon to just roll up and say a bunch of shit to convince Zim to let him use his stuff. Zim's very impressionable, and Zim's under the guise that he's going to betray Eon and use the Godmaker himself to take over the Earth for the Urkin Empire. And Eon knows this and lets him believe that because Zim, he can't defeat Eon. It's not gonna happen. And also the fact that Gur now serves as the connection between the folks trapped in the Ghost Zone and the big temporal zone battle. But other than that, yeah, he is kind of inconsequential, but like, to see people get so riled up about Zim, it's like, do you hate Zim? Is that what this is about? Like, why does it matter? I don't get it. But again, like, thank you for taking my story seriously enough to try to analyze it this deeply. Like, that's honestly incredible. This comment says like the stakes escalated too quickly, and I would argue no. It takes 9 chapters just for Eon to become Divinity. That's like past the halfway point, and maybe it's just because like I try to handle that by controlling the pacing with the motion comic, but some people just like zip through these freaking chapters as if it's like a race. Like they only want to absorb the information. As long as they can read the lines, that's all that matters, right? But anyways, if you feel like the stakes are rising too much for you, sorry, it is a crazy story, but 5YL is a story where I try to look at all of the potential of the shows and tackle them head on. Like, the show never gave Ben master control, so let's give Ben master control. The show never really dealt with Ben's opinion or use or lack thereof of Alien X, so let's tackle that head on. The show has a lot of potential to become crazy and overpowered and have like multiversal ending stakes, and they touched on it a little bit, but it never truly felt like all of the pieces that they were laying down connected. So with 5YL, I was just like, what if we took all of the things that the show set up and just like made a story about that? Like, it's supposed to be high stakes. It's supposed to be insane power scaling because the show is just like, hey, we can do that, but we're not gonna. So I decided I'm gonna. Another comment was even just saying it has like a constant need to cross over with other franchises. So let's take a quick look at that. So 5YL is based on Ben 10 and Danny Phantom with a splash of Zim thrown in for good zesty flavor. So what other series are we looking at? Let's see. There is a one panel, not even a full page. one panel out of a 12 chapter series so far that has like almost 500 pages. There is a single one panel that makes a bunch of nameless cameos, and that's it. So like I don't get that part. MonKi sorta, but like I feel like we did a pretty decent job like weaving the Saiyan lore into 5YL. You can check out our And Beyond episode on that. But yeah, I can kind of agree to the MonKi part. For the longest time, I was not going to put MonKi in the comic. Even I realized that was kind of a stretch. It wasn't until like years after 5YL has been out, I was having a conversation with Hershey, and it was just like, you know what, this is a fan fiction. And a big jumpstart for the channel was the Can Ben defeat Goku video, and then the additional what if Ben turned into a Super Saiyan, which is why I created MonKi. It just kind of felt right to like pay respects to the fans who stuck around for years, and MonKi was ultra popular. Like if you weren't there for that, like you have no idea. Like for a non-canon transformation that I didn't even show the artwork in the video, it was posted on my social media. He was the number one most popular 5YL alien with countless fan art. People loved the MonKi Man. So in chapter 9, I was like, okay, I'll throw him in there. This shit's not canon. Cartoon Network's never going to adapt this. Let's have some fun. Let's have him turn into a Saiyan. But not just a Saiyan, a Ben 10 version of a Saiyan. There is differences, both lore-wise and biologically, but arguably MonKi is also inconsequential. Like you can literally cut his 2 brief scenes from the comic and literally nothing will change it. Nobody ever acknowledges the Saiyans. I'm pretty sure nobody even says the name MonKi. You just see it in the title thing. So like if he's that much of an issue for you, I'm sorry. Just like literally skip that part and the comic is exactly the same. Like he doesn't matter. He was just a thank you for the fans who stuck around. Y'all are the OGs. So yeah, we got Ben 10 and Danny Phantom, a brief flavor of Zim, an even briefer flavor of MonKi, and that's it. So I really don't get, like, I'm convinced people that have an issue with all of the references and stuff never actually read the comic.
Editor Kuro here again. I didn't feel like setting up OBS. There are some Easter eggs and nods to like other shows and stuff, but like Easter eggs don't really count. I mentioned the one panel as a benefit of the doubt, like, okay, yeah, we have this brief scene where we showed a bunch of nameless other cameos, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But like Easter eggs and stuff, that doesn't count. That's like saying Ben 10 had a crossover with Gremlins because they mentioned Mogwai in an episode.
But jumping back over to this comment for a section, sorry, to this comment for a second, this is the first day I've drank coffee in a week or something. I was like, if I'm making this video, I gotta gear up for it, know what I'm saying? So my mind and body are like, whew. But yeah, Inmate 5580 says, my second and pettiest thing is that for some reason, every damn nerd thinks that chin straps and soul patches with no mustache are the coolest thing ever. And like, yeah, that's the point. Ben thinks he's being cool with it, and it's also scraggly because he's unkempt. Like, Ben is not supposed to look cool in 5YL. I've made statements about this, I've made posts about this. Even in the comic, Max straight up says, like, Ben's beard looks stupid. This topic I'm too exhausted about, but like, yeah, Ben is not supposed to look cool in 5YL. He's supposed to look like a guy that's like keeping himself together with like 2 hours of sleep and a shot of heroin or something, I don't know. But not that literally though. 5YL Ben doesn't do heroin. That you could prove. But yeah, for real, just like look up any of my other explanations about that. It's like intentional. But yeah, so if you think Ben doesn't look that great, that just means my character design works. So thank you for validating my intentions. But jumping back over to the long comment, it says like the fight against Divinity feels like it's been dragging on for too long, and that's 100% valid. For one, it's just taken me a long time to make this. We're at the point where like a new chapter comes out once a year. In fact, this year there's no new chapter because I'm making the motion comic. So like 5YL has been going on forever, and they've been in the temporal zone. Like they're tired, they're dehydrated. I'm sure half of them have to use the bathroom or something. Like, yeah, it's taken quite a bit to get there, might be. But even without that, like narrative wise, it also feels like it's been a long time, and I get that. Between each chapter, it's implied that some time has passed, whereas once Eon becomes Divinity, everything starts happening in real time, more or less. Like there's like you don't see Ben become Buck Wild, and the next page he just is, but more or less like these events are happening like minute to minute. So 4 chapters in the temporal zone, like, yeah, it feels like a bit. So I'm sorry that that's killing the story for you. I gotta get through that. The story also introduces way too much stuff in general, like the Orion Squad. I really like the concept of Ben training a plumber squad, but there's a crossover and a universe destroying event going on, so the story doesn't have time to focus on them. Also pretty valid. I wanted 5YL to seem like a window into what Ben's life is like in 5 years, and after 5 years, a lot of stuff has happened, and I feel like the Orion Squad in that context fits. I know there's a handful of people that don't vibe with the Orion Squad, but I still like them, and the fact that they are outclassed by like the multiversal universe ending is also sort of the point. I can't really speak too much on that until the series is over, but it's like, yeah, they have no business being there. They are totally outclassed, and it's unnecessary for them to even try. But like, that's the point. That was classic Ben's whole freaking thing, to be real. Danny's main villain also feels like he didn't have to be in the story. That one I can't agree with. Like, Vlad is, he's the freaking point. Like, I don't know how else to say it. I don't want to ramble on about this part too much, but it's like, no, Vlad's more important than Divinity in some regards. And his personal connection with Danny is his fallacy. That's always been Vlad's character, is despite how crazy screwed up all the shit that he's done, he still has like this passionate and admittedly pretty creepy, don't forget, he tried to clone this boy before, but this attachment to Danny, and it's always been the one thing that grounds him from being a completely insane evil psychopath. And Vlad wants to bring Danny to his side so that he can continue to be his truest self, but he doesn't have to be alone. And he's convinced that if he can get Danny to just see the light in his perspective, then Danny would gain a true understanding of himself and his abilities, much to what Vlad believes he has done, which allows him to constantly evolve his limits and reach the potential of the ghosts that I said earlier, which no one has really tried in Danny fandom before, and thus combat Ben as Alien X. Divinity who? And lastly, they also say they don't like how we made the reboot just a TV show in universe. That decision was made back when like it was not really seen with as much respect as it is nowadays. This was like mid-season 1 reboot when this shit was coming out, and I thought it would be a respectful nod to acknowledge its existence without tying it too much to it. Now that the reboot went on for 5 seasons and is over, I can see why it sucks a little bit. Would be dope for Vivewhale Ben to turn into Shock Rock, so I totally understand that. But like, there's no going back now. I already made that decision 7 years ago, and I'm sticking to it. But truthfully, I do think it's neat. Like, Ben is so famous, he got his own TV show. I mean, things like that have already happened in canon already, so this is kind of just continuing the notion, and I think it's an interesting way to incorporate the reboot without it just being another timeline. In fact, making it another timeline is the most generic thing you could ever do. Like, of course it's just another alternate Ben. Like, that's like, of course it is. This to me, even despite it being years, is more interesting. But like, if you don't vibe with it and you wish Vivewhale Ben could use the reboot aliens, totally valid. Sorry you're disappointed. More points about how fast Danny gets powers, and it's just like, yeah, like, have you seen the show? One time Danny literally pulled a power out of his ass. This comment also mentions how it dominates the fandom and everyone takes my word like I'm God and not just another fan. And yeah, that's true. I am God, and my opinions are right. If any of you disagree with me, you're just straight up wrong. I am only speaking truthful facts. And if I want to change something about the canon, then it is now canon, and you have to accept it. That's what you guys hear when I talk, right? Okay, to be fair, a lot of people in the comments did acknowledge, like, that's just what happens in all fandoms pretty much, and it's not something me or the Ink Tank are trying to do. So thank you guys for at least understanding that. For those of you that take my opinions too seriously or take Vivewhale as canon, I'm glad that our content can give you that kind of enjoyment, but if you ever think or feel something differently from what I say, that is just as valid as mine. You're free to think and do and feel and make whatever you want. That's kind of the beauty of fan fiction, or just making shit on the internet. But yeah, whenever we have an opinion or something, or we're just having a theory, we always make it very clear that this is just our thoughts and you're free to think and feel whatever you want. I don't know how people miss that. But also, on the flip side, if there's people out there that want to take Vivewhale as canon, I'm not just saying that because I made it, but I don't see an issue with that either. Like, there's a reason that headcanons exist. If people really enjoyed Vivewhale to the point where they wished it was part of the canon continuity, don't hate on them. Don't be mean. Like, that just means they like something. Like, I'm sure a lot of us have headcanons or have read other fan fictions and they're like, damn, this is awesome. I kind of like to believe this is canon, or at least wish it would. It's like, Vivewhale has gotten to the point where it's so popular that it upsets people. Like, that's just the truth. So I can imagine if you don't like our ideas and you see other people out there being like, this is great, I wish it was canon, you're gonna want to knock them down a few pegs and be like, hey buddy, how about you get a fucking clue? But it's like, let them have their fun, you know? If you're debating about actual canon, that's one thing. But if someone's just harmlessly like, I like Vivewhale, I wish it was canon, just leave them alone. It doesn't matter. Let them have fun. And if any of you out there made a fan fiction that people loved enough and wished it was canon, I'm sure you all would want to defend your fans too. It's like, it's flattering. It's very sweet. It's not canon, but you can go ahead and headcanon it. It's fine. Like, leave them alone. You guys are freaking ruthless sometimes. Optimus Coctimus says there's no Clyde 5, and valid, my bad. I'll throw him into the next chapter. Amalgaman also got mentioned here too. He was just another commission. If I wasn't paid to make him, he probably wouldn't exist. So making Kevin an Osmosian again, I still vibe with that, but that's a can of worms. We're not gonna go there today. The Void only shows up so that Danny can fall into his dark matter. No, that was always going to happen. The Void was made after Ash signed on board, who was not around for when this story was being written in 2017. And with the inclusion of him, we can also use the excuse of dark matter amplifying him. It's also what allows us to narratively put in this dream sequence instead of just flashing into his mind. But like, it would have happened anyways ways without the void being there, just because of the pure, unfiltered essence of ecto energy. I feel like we've done plenty to set that up, and again, if any of y'all have watched the show, you see how it can happen too. But yeah, the void was not made as a plot device. In fact, we threw the void in there because Ryan created him and I really liked him, and I think he has a really unique power. But whether or not the void showed up, Danny would still have done that. But it certainly helps to have an extra reason as to why Danny does it. Oh my god, this thread is so long. My raw footage is already over an hour and I'm gonna have to edit this. I don't know, at this point I'm scrolling and a lot of this are just like the same things over and over again, so I feel like I'm just gonna cut the video right here. If there's anything that was commented here that you still want me to respond to, maybe I'll respond in the comments down below. I just want to say thank you to everybody who commented on this thread. Even though there's a fair amount of negativity here, they'd only have something to criticize if they read it in the first place, so thank you for giving it your best shot. I can see myself maybe doing another video like this in the future, but no promises. But hey, feel free to think whatever you like about 5YL, as long as you get something out of it or you're talking about it, it serves its purpose. Episodes 4 through 6 are pretty far along and will drop by the end of the year, and you can visit our Patreon to watch me go crazy making this thing in my video diaries. I seriously need to stop drinking caffeine. Definitely shouldn't have had any caffeine today, but I hope y'all have a great weekend, and as always, keep it fizzy.